thank you, Amanda, for joining us. So we've got with us today Amanda Whitman, and she is a former teacher and is working her way into a new career. And wanted to bring her on because as a teacher, she was a leader. We all know teachers are leaders in our society, but she took on some additional leadership roles. And I think it's a really interesting conversation to talk about how the leadership that you see from something like a teaching profession, how it then can translate into other industries and other worlds. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am so excited about the conversation. I think the audience will get a lot out of it as well. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm Amanda Whitman, honored to be talking with you. I was really flattered when you thought to talk to me about leadership within teaching because, it's something that I'm definitely passionate about. So I was a teacher for the last 5 years. My first year, I started in second grade at one school, and then I did 4 years in fifth grade at a different school. Um, I don't want to give too many details too early, but my experience in my professional setting and with leadership was such a whirlwind. It was very unique, one could say the least. Um, so my first year teaching was the year COVID hit.
Oh, wow.
And that was just obviously teaching is leadership. I mean, anyone that works with kids, anyone that has an opportunity to be influential in, youth development, you know that there's leadership there. But starting off that school year and it being just about like how do I guide these students through life, through the school, there's also curriculum, there's the learning, social, emotional, and then all of a sudden, March 10th, schools were shut down, COVID-19. And there was an interesting side of leadership that I like to say really kind of lasted for 2 to 3 years after that, that I found within just like teamwork. Because switching to online teaching, I mean, it's something that like I like to say in the corporate world and professional world, like you guys have the ability to work from home. Teachers didn't work from home. It was not a thing. Um, so there was this time period where there wasn't an expert to kind of guide us through a situation necessarily, or there, I mean, we hadn't seen this before. We were all kind of stuck in this, chaotic state together. And I definitely, found leadership in those situations and those abilities where, or those times where, I was straight out of college. I had done some online learning and I was able to bring teamwork to the table and kind of guide us all into figuring out a way to do digital learning, remote learning, with children at the time, second graders. So that was my first year in teaching. My second year in teaching, we came back and we were still online, and I had switched to fifth grade. Um, and so, again, just kind of working together, the teamwork, knowing that I'm necessarily like not the leader in this situation. I had a department head, I had so many people that were guiding me, but finding ways to be a contributing member in that time period that was just so chaotic. Um, and helping guide a whole team into a digital learning platform, remote learning, interactive learning, finding ways to engage fifth graders who are very technologically competent at this point,
Right.
and getting them into buying into like, you're going to learn from me on a screen. And I know you'd rather be doing anything else on that screen, but you're going to learn from me. And then my third year in teaching, I found leadership in a different way because I was getting my master's that year. And my department head, which is also education terminology, my grade level chair, got a promotion elsewhere. And I just became the department head. And I only had 2 years of experience and like 2 months. And COVID was in it. And I just all of a sudden was the department head. So I like to really say that like my leadership and what I learned from it as not the leader, but observing leaders and then becoming a leader myself, like those first 3 years are really kind of um, paved the path, if you will. And then I maintained being department head for my third, fourth, and fifth year within teaching. It was, you know, a wild ride.
That's incredible to be able to move into clearly they saw something in you that was standing out, and being able to move into an important leadership position like that so early in your career. I mean, it's incredible. It's
Thank
incredible.
you.
Yeah. I mean, I
I
think that's
mean,
a lot.
it was one of those situations like I fell into leadership. I probably tripped on my way down, you know what I mean?
Right?
Um, but I think I didn't know too many people that had come into leadership in a similar way where there maybe weren't quote unquote prepared. They didn't necessarily have leadership training or experience. They weren't like looking for the leadership. They just got it. And it was very like humbling in many ways. And it was very scary in many ways. And there were things that I learned about it in that year that, completely changed the way that I look at and I think of leadership. But it was incredibly, flattering that my administration saw something in me and saw a leadership capability in me that I'd always wanted, but you think of it like a 10-year timeline, not
Right.
2 years and 2 months. Here you go. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I loved it. It was such a learning experience to, like I said, have no experience and just here you go. Um,
Right. I want to talk about something that you mentioned, also because I think it's such an important point. You talked about teamwork.
mm,
And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough from a leadership perspective. We talk about team building.
yes.
What we talk about as leaders, we have our teams and we're building our teams and we're bringing our teams together, and we're getting them to work together and we're handling the conflict. But teamwork is such an important concept from a leadership perspective because as leaders, we not only have to build our teams, we have to work across, we have to work up, we have to work down, we have to work with people just across different skill sets, and that whole concept of teamwork, I don't think we talk about enough. That it's not just about building the people who report to us or building up
Yeah.
the teams underneath us. It's about all of those relationships that we're building
Mhm.
across multiple organizations, across many different, and for a teacher, you're building your relationships with other teachers and with your administration and with your students and with the parents. And there's so many different layers
Mhm.
that you have to think about. Um, so I love that you brought that up, and I think that's such an important leadership concept that maybe we don't talk about enough.
Yeah. I mean, again, with how it started with COVID, it really was it's hard even now to think of adjectives to describe it if I'm totally honest, but um I was fortunate to be in an environment where, and potentially from desperation, where we really were like, how is this gonna, what are we gonna do? What's happening? But I was really fortunate in the fact that I did have a leader that was willing and like very happy to let me contribute. And then, in education, especially once I became, the department head, it's all about collaboration and teamwork. There's no like, oh, one classroom can just be the succeeding classroom and can be, the one that's exceeds expectations, excels in everything, and then everyone's left behind. I mean, my classroom was my classroom, but a true like teamwork environment and education is seeing all of the classrooms as opportunities to support, opportunities to help, opportunities to grow, opportunities to, like, hey, my student may not be understanding the way I've tried approaching this with this learning theory, this learning strategy. Can you try a different way? Can you try? I see your students' data was remarkably high for something in this area. Can you support this group with this? And so much of it really was like I probably saw and or taught every single student on every single grade level that I had.
Yeah.
It was not just my class of 30, 33 kids. And I think that so much of that leadership that came from teamwork that I learned about it. You're right. I don't think it's talked about enough because it's not about what individual can succeed. Like as a group, we all need to get to that finish line. We all need to get there. The teamwork that's required for us all to get there is willing to take on, extra things or extra responsibilities to elevate the whole group, not an individual, because we're all have a timeline. We all have a finish line.
Yeah. We all have our own goals and our own
Mhm.
aspirations, and we owe it to ourselves to make sure that we're able to fulfill
Yeah.
our own goals. But being a part of a society, being a part of an organization, being a part of a school, it does require you to look at the organization as a whole,
Hmm.
and make sure that you're also playing your part in
Hmm.
that organization to make sure everyone
Yeah.
is able to be able to realize the success.
And I think I was really fortunate in the fact that the person who was our department head when I first joined the school set a really, really, really wonderful example of leadership can also look like, hey, this isn't my area of expertise. This isn't my strong suit. Math isn't my isn't my jam or my subject. But I see, this person's data is like skyrocketed. What strategies are you doing? You teach us. I thought I knew what leadership was prior to really getting into teaching, but seeing that ability of taking a step back and saying, you know what, you might be an expert here, or you might have something that could bring to this table, um, and allowing those teammates to have those moments of, um, professional development together, bringing teaching technical training, teaching areas of success that this learning theory, this strategy worked for me. Maybe you can try this. And that collaboration. We all have our individual goals. I mean, at the end of the year, I get seen or scored or test or looked at based on my testing results. But it's a team that has to get there because you cannot just leave, this group or this section, this class behind. We're all getting there together.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think some organizations, some companies would probably say that they wish that they had a little bit more of that attitude within the company. Because you do see in some organizations, you do see kind of that competition,
Yeah.
and the mismatching of agendas and the
Yeah.
mismatching of goals.
Mhm.
And it creates a lot of conflict.
And like you said, something that's not talked about enough in society.
Yeah,
This happens to be one industry within education that it's not accomplished without teamwork. It's not it's you
right.
don't succeed without collaboration. But I mean, just from my little bit of research into, corporate and really understanding what's out there, like um there are probably departments or areas where there is competition, or there is, meeting your numbers, meeting your quota, meeting whatever. And there probably is not a collaboration fostered environment or a teamwork fostered environment. And I understand that like each environment has its own needs, has its own thing. You can't have rainbows and sunshine everywhere. I mean, what was potentially in an education building might not be applicable everywhere, but um, I do think it is something that is not used enough.
Yeah.
And like you said, team building is a very big word or not a big word, a hot topic. It is something that's known, it's in demand, you're going to see it everywhere. But I mean, truly fostering teamwork, I agree. I don't think it's seen enough. And of course, like I said, there might be some environments where you might not really be able to have it. But I think it's a shame that it's not seen a little bit more, especially in the environments where you can have it
Yeah.
and it could really flourish.
Agree. Agree. We better change that.
We'll change it right now.
Yeah. So tell us a little, share a little bit more about you. Tell us something, either as a teacher or in, other aspects of your life. What are you really passionate about? What really drives you?
Yeah. Um, so health is something that I'm really into. And I think that, again, almost on a theme of talking about things that are not talked about enough, or you only see health as one area and you don't see the whole what's under the umbrella. Um, health, not only physical, mental, but they're social and emotional. I'm very, very, very passionate about it. I am fortunate enough to have had an environment around me that that I grew up or that I was supported in understanding that you don't have to take care of your mental health, or you're allowed to take care of your mental health before something goes wrong, or before you feel you need to, before you hit a rock bottom, or you're, you know, really in a desperate place before you need to seek it. You can also maintain and support and grow and develop your mental health, social health, emotional health prior to a desperate state, um, and physical as well. That's something that I'm really, really passionate about. I love sharing my experiences with it. I was fortunate in the fact that I was introduced to therapy when I was 15 or 16. And I have on and off seen these same therapists since then. Um, and I love it because it's not something that I've only turned to when it felt like it was desperate, or it felt like it was the
Mm.
world's going to crumble around me if I don't do this. There were times where I was also able to use it as reflection and as like processing. Um, but not even just mental health, physical health. I personally am learning and going through a little bit of a journey where I've learned some more stuff about thyroid health and autoimmune disorders. And I have indicators that show that I might have an autoimmune disorder that attacks my thyroid, and learning about things through that, learning about the food that goes in our body. And then social and emotional health is something that is very big in education, but I very rarely hear it talked about with adults.
That is such an important point. And you're right. I don't think we talk about it enough. I am from a generation, I am a year or two older than you. I am I am from a generation where that is something that I wouldn't say it's not talked about at all,
Yeah.
but not nearly to the extent of being
Yeah.
addressed the way it is with your generation, and even it's getting better.
Oh, completely. And I think some of that came with the understanding that you don't have to need therapy
Mhm.
to seek therapy, or
Yeah.
you don't have to like the excuse of like, oh, I won't need it. I don't need that, or something. You don't have to need it to still find benefits in it, or to gain emotional intelligence from it or to gain communication skills from it. I mean, there's lots of other things that you can find within, um, or reasons to go and seek guidance. But I mean, if you think about the amount of times that you consult friends or family or colleagues on a topic and they give you counsel and advice, I mean, that's in a way a form of therapy. It doesn't look much different.
Right.
Um, but it's a safe space that allows people to talk and to get an unbiased opinion. That is an area that I did need because I have a lot of people in my life, myself included, that have very strong biases in the fact, protective biases. I mean, what's the analogy? Moms are lionesses, like protective biases. And so, yeah, but the area specifically with social and emotional, I've had people ask me, well, what's the difference between mental and emotional? And I think like quite literally pointing like mental, emotional, and understanding like you have needs here that you maybe aren't seeing here or vice versa. Um, but I just really learned a lot of reflecting through prioritizing health and reflecting about times that even with physical health, I really should have listened to my body and taken a break for a little bit of time, and I didn't. Or I really should have listened to my emotions in that setting, and I ignored it, and I maybe reacted to something that I didn't want to, or reacted in a way I didn't want to. Um, so I think that there's a beautiful skill of reflection that, you know, people can gain when they prioritize and really look into their health.
I do think that that is one of the things that the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, are bringing into the workplace
Yes.
that is you can have whatever complain whatever you want to about these new generations, and there's always been every generation that comes along, there's always the older generation always has problems with it. And but I do believe that the priority around mental health, priority around having the right kind of culture in
Yeah.
organizations. We're seeing such a shift in how organizations are operating. I do believe that COVID had a little bit to do with that also. I think
Yeah.
people had to take a step back and start to really look at what they were getting out of their lives. And I know I did. I questioned a lot of things. So, it's fascinating, the shifts that
Yes.
we're starting to see
Yes.
in that area, in organizations,
Mm. Yes.
and not just, okay, that's just something you got to deal with yourself.
Yeah.
How do we, as an organization, create an environment where that's okay?
I agree. I think a lot of people are starting to prioritize culture and climate in an environment, as a factor of, employment, or even a factor of should I stay here or consider changing to a different
Right.
environment and making it a priority. And that's also not to say, you said something interesting about generational differences between it. I often find that there's a lot of defensiveness
Yeah.
in this topic is talked about. And something that I find that can go both ways is defensiveness, and then also like assumptions. That's not to say that therapy is for everyone. Like it's not
Right.
something that should be shoved down or, really hammered in or forced on anyone. It's just more so rethinking or having an open-minded approach of like, you could get benefits from this. Because I've definitely spoken with a variety of people that it was maybe received with immediate defensiveness, closed-minded resistance. And I'm not going to convince you to go to therapy. I mean, my goodness, I don't like, I'm not going to force anyone or convince anyone. Um, but I think there's not a right or a wrong. And I think often this is talked about in that way of, oh, people in the past did this incorrectly or people whatever. I think there's a this time right now, this is what's working for us. And I
Right.
think that that is kind of similar to what you said post COVID. A lot of people looked around and thought, this isn't working for me, or hey, this change kind of did work for me. And let's keep looking into that. And let's keep pursuing that. Um, so I do think COVID kind of like enabled the conversation a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. I also love the fact that, um, if therapy isn't right for you, there are other options. There are, and I'm in communities, where, the woo-woo, communities where there are a lot of healers and different, whether it's from a nutrition perspective or from a mindset perspective or from a, there's lots of different ways to help to heal.
Yeah.
And there's lots of resources out
Yeah.
there to help in, whatever way works for you.
Yeah.
And it may be multiple ways.
Mhm.
You may find multiple ways too. And even things like meditation and, just finding quiet times. And
Yeah.
so there's lots of ways to help address those. And I think from a a work perspective, a leadership perspective, just being a part of any organization, we can be better at whatever it is we're choosing to do
Yeah.
if we're paying attention to how our bodies
Mhm.
are, physical health, mental health, whatever, we can actually show up in a better
Yeah.
way
Yes,
if
I
we're
do
better
think
ourselves.
yes. And similar to what you said, I do think COVID enabled a certain conversation of checking in on everyone,
Absolutely.
not just the physical, not just the emotional, so
Mhm.
all, all checking in on where you're at, where you're at in your life and like how are you. I mean, it was a scary time. A lot of people went through a lot of really serious things, and it's crazy that we're still talking about it, 5 years, 4 years later.
Right?
But I think that's a big part of leadership is, and I think part of that goes with climate and culture. If you can really find an environment that doesn't see your employee as a number and you see them as like
Yes.
a well-being, a soul, a person. And also a little bit of a jump, but you said something that with health, there's no one size fits all. And like, who am I to be talking about this? I am not an expert. I am somebody that I just had a time where I had an experience that I'm sharing. There's no one size fits all though. There's
Right.
like therapy might not work for everyone. You might need to join a kickboxing class and hit a bag really hard. That's great for you. You might
I've
want to
done
take up
that.
knitting. Yeah, you like girls' night, talk about some stuff. But I do think like in terms of the leadership side in business and in working, a big thing that I learned that I so appreciated from my leadership was not only asking like the checkups, how are you? How's everything doing? But really internally, like taking in what I say as a response. And you can tell when it's that active listening. I hear what you're saying. I'm digesting what you're saying. I'm responding to what you're saying. And not every company, not every environment can necessarily do something about it. Education is not an environment where if I say I'm stressed, I should expect a massage coupon in my in my box afterwards or something like that. And I doubt that that's anywhere. Um, but I think that's a big part in leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it really is the human side of it all.
There's a principal, and was actually having this conversation with, on an earlier episode. Um, it's called situational leadership.
Okay.
So as a leader showing up and assessing the situation, whatever the situation is, both. from a team perspective, but also individually, because you may run into someone in the hall and they're having a bad day.
Mm,
And if you can, as a leader, kind of assess the situation,
mhm.
you never know what kind of impact you can have. Maybe that person just needs a break for a
Yeah.
couple years. Or maybe that person has got something going on at home that they need to go take care of. Or maybe, just kind of keeping your eyes open, and what is the term? Keeping your head on a swivel.
Yes.
And making sure you're kind of seeing what's going on with your team, and not even necessarily as the leader of the team, but also as a teammate.
Right.
It's kind of seeing what's happening and going on around you and responding to
Mm,
the situation. That can make such a meaningful difference,
yes.
in an organization and to the individuals that we
Yeah.
work with every day.
Yes. I completely agree. And I think that that was something in my early leadership, um, before I really knew anything of what I was doing. I thought it was simply like, okay, let's go teach, let's go do our job. um, was so much of what I learned in the early parts when I stepped up and became a leader myself was like the human side, the emotion side, even emotional intelligence, active listening. So much of it was, I don't want to say like a counseling side, but we talk about teamwork in terms of actions. There was a certain level of teamwork needed, necessary within leadership, um, where the environment needed to be supportive as well. Needed to be efficient, needed to be productive, of course, needed to be supportive though. And I think that that was something that I had no idea prior to doing it. Um, and I just went straight into the motions. I went straight into this is what we need to accomplish. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And we didn't necessarily slow down into, all of a sudden, this um, teacher may be really struggling with, um, behaviors, or even like they're just not getting this concept. And that can be so defeating on a teacher. And I didn't know, like, monitor that stuff, like, figure out ways to support. And that was definitely something that was, while it was a failure at one point, it turned into a much bigger success later on. Um, learning those.
So I think we all have failures,
Yeah.
and felt the setbacks are so important because
Yeah.
that's where we learn.
Yes.
We don't always necessarily learn from, I mean, if everything's going great, you may not have an opportunity to learn something from it. But if something is not going well, there's your opportunity. You're gonna learn something from it. If you want to come out on the other end.
Yeah,
So
you're
uh,
definitely gained some resilience and
yeah,
coping skills. I mean, if things are always going great and all of a sudden, like one hiccup, one detour is discovered and you've never really experienced hard times, you are not going to have any coping skills or problem solving skills, actually.
right, right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about skills. Um, what are, in your opinion, what are some of the skills that you need as a leader? So if you were talking to someone coming up as a leader, and I know this was just a couple years ago for you, um, what what would you encourage them to? What skills would you encourage them to grow?
Oh, I mean, what stands out to me in learning very, very quickly, I had to learn quite quickly that, there's different personality types. I genuinely believe there's also different types of everything, different personality, different leadership, different following or team types of people. And
Right.
I had to learn, I felt like my knowledge of it was very singular, very small in terms of, oh yeah, I've done Myers-Briggs. Oh yeah, I've done the personality type Wazoo. Okay, great. You're also a leader. You're this, you're this, you're this. But in terms of my application of those leadership and like thinking of my people skills, who my audience were, not everyone needed the type of leader that was a problem solver. Not everyone needed the type of leader that was a coach. Not everyone, some people needed a mentor. Some people did not like simply being given an answer to a question or a solution to the problem. Oh, just do this or something like that. And they really wanted to process it more or think more. So I really had to learn a lot or do a lot with like needs analysis of my audience early on in
Mhm.
my leadership. And I think that that's like a very important skill, is being able to understand, obviously this person's coming to you for a need and you do want to respond to that need, but there's also almost like a read between the lines of what they need. How are they best going to receive what your input is? How are they best going to receive what you have to say? Because I've had times where, especially early on, when people would come to me and I would just give them the solution. Oh, just go do this, go do this, go do this. And I definitely could have been perceived almost more like authoritarian, or that's not the right word. Yeah. And what they wanted was like coaching, helping to process, a little bit more mentorship, brainstorming solutions together. Um, I do think that's very, very important for leaders, is you have to lead. They also need to be able to follow you, and you need to know how they're going to receive the information. Um, I also think in talking about like knowing your audience, knowing how they receive information, there's a certain buy-in process that a lot of leaders get handed. Like, we're doing this initiative, we're doing this thing, bring it to your team, get everyone on board. And first off, if you are against it, you are not going to get your team bought into it. So check yourself, check your face, check your own emotions, your own attitude on this. We're all here for a job. I definitely had to learn that. Um, but with the buy-in process, I mean, learning how to get a team bought into something, but not only just bought in, like really truly on board, motivated towards it. Um, and I would say the last thing is, I think everyone really likes to understand like a why. Why am
Right.
I doing this? Why is somebody else having us do this? I don't think, or for what I've seen, the leadership that's just like, do this with very little explanation, very little connection as to the relevance or how this impacts you. I have not seen much success with that. So I think understanding those things, know your audience, know how to motivate and really like collaborate, unify to this buy-in stage. Um, and it is human nature for people want to know why,
Right.
to want to know, why is this relevant? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because I often think that leaders find that questions like, why are we doing this? I've seen that sometimes that can be met with, defensiveness. Like, it's almost being challenged that they're asking why. That is human nature. Like, anyone
Absolutely.
that's around kids know that they ask why all day. So why is it any different that adults can't ask why? Um, that was something that I really had to wrap my head around quite quickly.
I spent a lot of my career doing business process and building strategy and executing. And one of the things that I had a leader years ago, she would tell me, she said, Continue ask why until they have no more answer." And
Mhm.
there were so many times that people would look at me and say, "Okay, stop asking me why." Uh, but it does give you such a different layer of information when you continue to ask why. Why did you
Yeah,
do that? So why is that process like that? And why
yeah,
and it really makes people think about.
yeah,
Because what would end up happening is we would get underneath so many things, because they're talking at the surface level. And
mhm,
if you continually ask why, then you get underneath what's
mhm,
happening so that you can really, that's where the problem solving really starts to happen,
yeah,
is at peeling back the layers and
yeah.
getting underneath what's really happening. So yeah, I mean, that's such an important piece.
I think that's something else that's a big trend is, um, understanding, like, when people do come with questions, it's not necessarily resistance. I think there's
Right.
a little bit more of an understanding with that. Um, we need to know why we're doing what we're doing
Yeah.
to do it. And I do think that that's something that I saw kind of evolve over my 5 years in education and my experience in leadership. Um, was I saw people come into an understanding of you're not asking me this because you're trying to push back. Okay,
Right.
like I can answer this now.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
I have one more question for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fascinating conversation. I so appreciate your time.
I'm honestly, I've been so excited to do this with you. I've been so excited to talk about this. I think teaching is an area that is, you don't really know what it is unless you've been a teacher or someone
Right.
extremely close in your life is a teacher. You
Right.
just don't know.
Right.
And I love talking about it. It's a big passion. I know you asked me about my passions, but I mean, I loved it. It's, it's a profession that requires your heart and your soul. I
Yeah.
love talking about it. I love talking about my leadership with it. Unique and as unconventional as it may have been. So no, I appreciate you having me.
Yes. Yes. This has been such a great conversation, and I love your energy. I love your passion. And I think there's just so much that you'll be able to do with this. So, but on that topic, what is next for you?
Um, so I leaving teaching was definitely a
Yeah.
big decision. That required a lot of learning, a lot of research, a lot of just what else is out there. Um, I think my biggest hurdle was understanding how is what I've done as a teacher, how does that stuff translate into the corporate world? How does it translate into business? I don't think, like I said, um, unless you've been a teacher, you don't know really what are all the hats teachers can wear or have worn. So a little bit of answering your question, it comes with a little bit of a side answer. I had to really learn my strengths, like what have I done as a teacher that is transferable? Teachers have the ability to work with autonomy. There's creative problem solving, communication, organization, time management, adaptability. I could go on. I'll lose breath, flexibility, collaboration, conflict resolution. And I had to find a way to understand, and those are just attributes. How has what I've done in education, what does it look like elsewhere? What are those titles? What does that translate to? Um, you know, Skills that I've acquired that people probably don't know teachers have. Project management. Every single year is a new project. We have a timeline. We have certain things to get in. I need to schedule out this timeline. I need to find a way to assess periodically, frequently, whether we're meeting our current trajectory. If we're not, how are we going to adjust? Um, change management, transformation, process improvement. I mean, I just said we switched to online teaching from COVID. I mean, that's just got all of those things written all over it. Data analysis, like I said, I took weekly data, making sure my the learning path that my students were on, the trajectory was working for them. It was individualized, it met their needs analysis. Even actually, I was jokingly saying this to someone, but I also feel like I spent the last 5 years in sales because convincing 33 fifth graders that math is awesome. I've been selling it. I'm in sales. Obviously, a little bit more of a stretch. I wasn't making cold calls, but there is a certain level of people skills of communication skills there, selling a product, um, communications mastering. Oh my gosh, curriculum and design, and then even amongst my colleagues, amongst adults, helping with the onboarding process and teaching your department heads what I kind of stepped into. It's a part of the onboarding process, conflict resolution, technical training of, our colleagues. If we learn something, for example, developing a digital learning platform, needing to teach that to the rest of our our business so that we're all learning and developing. We're all growing. We're lifelong learners. So really what's next for me, I am switching into corporate. I am looking, I always have a difficult time describing this because I've done so much. I am having a difficult time narrowing it down, but because I'm so open-minded. As I keep reading and learning, I keep thinking, oh, I've definitely done stuff with that. I've done that. I've done that. I'm looking to get my foot in the door with training, learning and development. I have experience and interest in project management, change management, process improvement, all the things that I really just shared with you. So my next steps, I'm looking to get into corporate. I'm excited to learn more about it. I feel like I'm just a sponge, and I'm constantly just discovering new transferable skills on a day-to-day basis. The more I learn, and I'm excited to try something else. It's not that much of a jump from teaching to training or teaching to learning and
Right.
development in the sense that I'm teaching to adults. Um, but I really, really love change. I love challenge. Love it. So I'm enjoying trying to see how I can fit into a corporate space. And yeah.
I love that. And speaking from personal experience, of course, my experience as a teacher was many more years ago, than yours. But, um, I've always said that if you can be a great teacher, you can be a lot of things. Because, there are so many skills that you build, when you're teaching. And I know that whatever you come across, you'll be wildly successful at it. Just getting to know you over the last few weeks has been a pleasure. And I think you will have some great success in, wherever you end up.
Thank you so much. No, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you over the last few weeks. Like I said, I was so excited that you've asked me to get on Leadership Portraits and talk about what I expected at the time being almost underwhelming, but realizing, like you shared and like I've shared, um, teachers wear a lot of hats.
Yeah,
I'll talk about it every day of the week if necessary. We are so much more, and probably the best multitaskers out there in the world, by the way.
absolutely.
If you're going to hire a teacher, if you're going to hire a job that like needs multitasking out the wazoo, look for an educator. Like I can guarantee you that there are many skills of teaching a subject while also calming, something in the corner of the room, while also answering emails, while also hearing an announcement, while also checking the answers to make sure they're right. I mean, I know that sounds minimal, but
Oh, it absolutely
multitasking.
is not minimal. I mean, that's to be the what you can accomplish on a day-to-day basis in dealing with the students and dealing with all of the different things and the students and the parents and the administration and all the different tasks that you have to get done on a daily basis. I think it's incredible. So I am looking so forward to seeing, you know, where you end up and what happens next for you because I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm ready.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your insights. Some fantastic insights here and just thank you for giving me this time and giving me a chance to have this conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me talk about leadership and teaching, and thank you for letting me share as well. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Oh, one more thing. How would someone get in touch with you? Are you on LinkedIn?
I am. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
My name is Amanda Witmond. I'm on LinkedIn. My
I will
contact
put the
information is there
link
as
in the
well.
show notes for
Okay.
the audience. And I'll make sure it's out there and everything so that if you want to get in touch with Amanda, you will have her information out there. Just check out the show notes and you'll be able to get in touch with her.
Yes.
So awesome. And well, great. Have a great day and enjoy this process. It can
Thank
be
you very much. You as well. Have a good day.